Hare Krishna. Today we are continuing with chapter 3, which is about Karma Yoga, or the path of action without attachment to the results. Om Jnana Timidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. We're continuing now after the second chapter, where Arjun has asked Krishna. There are a total of 16 questions, and some of these questions will be answered now in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So there is a principle of selfless action. Karma yoga does not simply mean the yoga of work. It means to be able to act selflessly without attachment for the result. This is called Nishkam Karma Yoga. So there are some principles we'll be covering in depth in this presentation. So first of all, action is inevitable. It's not possible to remain inactive. But work can be done as a sacrifice. The results of our work can be offered as a sacrifice so that we can advance in our spiritual path rather than being bound by the results of action. There's the concept of swadharma, one's own duty. There is also the concept here of lust, desire for sense enjoyment. And this causes us to not act according to our wisdom and knowledge. It covers wisdom. And this is a problem on the spiritual path. And finally, how do we realize the higher self? How do we realize the soul? How do we conquer lust and remain fixed on a spiritual path? So this is about trying to resolve the conflict between wisdom and duty. Okay, so let's look at this. So Arjun was in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He told Krishna in the beginning, he said, Krishna, I don't see anything good that can come of this war. I want to give it up and detach myself from the world so that there will be peace. But Krishna is demanding, Arjun. He's saying, you must do this. It is your duty to engage in this warfare. So if it is better to be intelligent rather than to do work, why engage in this warfare? That is partly what is being discussed in this chapter. How this action, and specifically the action that is being given by Sri Krishna. Now, normally one may say, look, warfare is always bad. Violence is bad. But in this case, there were unrighteous people who had taken the kingdom away. When unrighteous people rule, there is always going to be suffering. This world is a place of suffering. There's always going to be suffering, no doubt. But when unrighteous people rule, unrighteous people whose goal in life is simply to enjoy, to take as much as they can, to exploit nature, nature withdraws herself. Nature says, no, this world is not really for that. This world is for you to become spiritually grown up, to realize your place. And you are not the enjoyer. You are not the controller. So this attitude of trying to be the enjoyer and controller, it's not the spiritually aware approach to life. So when unrighteous persons who may even be well behaved, but when those unrighteous persons are ruling the country and they are exploiting and taking resources for themselves, this leads to a bad situation. And so it was Krishna's desire that Arjun should fight and defeat these unrighteous persons, the Kauravas. So Krishna is trying to establish logically for Arjun why he must engage in action. Jatu tishtati akaramakrit. No one can remain inactive, not even for a moment. It is not possible. What does that mean? So there's the biological necessity. We have to do some work. We have to do breathing. We have to do digestion. There has to be circulation. These are biological necessities. And then it's also universally observed that we always are impelled to act. It is the modes of material nature which act on us, and they push us into doing things. Now, there's also the concept of the hypocrite, the pretender, mityachara, someone who is pretending to restrain the senses. Look at me, I'm very spiritual. I am sitting in a nice lotus posture and my eyes are half closed. But inwardly, I'm thinking about objects of enjoyment. The whole point of the yoga process is to detach the senses, disengage the senses from constantly being engaged with sense objects. I have to be eating something. I have to be drinking something. I have to be smoking something. I have to be tasting something. My eyes have to be seeing something that I like. This constant desire to be plugged into some form of sense enjoyment is the opposite of what helps us to focus inwardly. In this chapter, we're not talking about coming to the point of inward focus, but talking about how it can be hard to focus inwardly. Because Arjuna was saying to Krishna, "Oh, Krishna, it would be better for me to go to the forest and live by begging and sit and meditate than to do this." And Krishna is saying, no, you cannot remain completely inactive. It's not possible. So there are basically two different disciplines. The destination is to join with the Supreme. That is the word yoga. Yoga means to join up, to unite, to yoke oneself with the Supreme Spirit. And there are basically two paths that Krishna is saying. There is Jnana Yoga. There's the path of analysis, those who are contemplative and analytical, and they use theoretical knowledge to try to discriminate between matter and spirit. Basically, look at something. Is this eternal? Does it change? Does it have a beginning, a middle, and an end? Well, then, no, it is not spirit. It is matter. And this is a very difficult path. It requires a lot of discipline. It requires adherence for many, many years, possibly many, many lifetimes before there is any kind of positive result. On the other hand, there is karma yoga. Karma yoga is the path of action. So this is someone who is an active worker. They are focused on performing prescribed duties without being attached to the result. Now, that phrase, without being attached to the result, this is the key difference between karma yoga and simply doing karma. So what do we mean? Karma means I want the fruits of my action. I'm doing a job because I want to get paid. I am trying to please other people because I want them to please me. I am, doing something because I want a result. That's called karma. But karma yoga means I am doing something. The result doesn't belong to me. I am offering the results of my work as an offering, as a sacrifice to the Supreme. Okay, that is karma yoga. It is very hard to obtain perfection, and we cannot attain perfection simply by abstaining from work. And someone who acts without attachment is better than a false renunciate. Who is a false renunciate? The false renunciate is the person who says, look, I'm giving up everything. I have become detached. I only keep one cloth on me and I live in the forest. I am so detached. But that person is only thinking about ways to collect things that they can enjoy and possibly attract followers and so forth. It is also said that the monkey is considered to be a philosopher by that standard because the monkey wears no clothes, lives in the forest, and is eating only fruit. But the monkey's business is chasing after other monkeys. And that's what the monkey does all day. So this is called Markata Vairagya. the renunciation of the monkey. Monkeys are not renounced. They are mischievous and they are always active and they are always disturbed wanting something. So there is a cycle of sustenance. And this is described in verses such as Yagya Shishtasana Santo Muchante Sarvakil Bishai Bhunjate Te Twagam Papa Ye Pachanti Atmakaranat. Everything that we do, we subsist, all living bodies subsist on food grains. We must have food grains. And even if we follow, like we will follow a fast every twice a lunar month, we will follow the Ekadashi fast and abstain from eating grains and beans. But we need grains. Grains give us everything that we need, along with fruits and vegetables and grains and some dairy products. We have complete nutrition. But grains come from somewhere. Where do they come? Grains require rain. Where does rain come from? Rain is something that is received as a result of sacrifice. What is sacrifice? Sacrifice comes from performing our prescribed duties. And so it is said that if we are eating grains, but we do not, if we do not do an offering, if we are not offering in sacrifice something, we can also prepare things, we can cook things, and we can offer them. We can offer them to the divine. We can offer things to Krishna. Say, Krishna, please accept this offering. I have cooked this for you. I am offering you some water. I am offering you a fruit. I am offering you a flower. I have made some simple flatbread. I'm offering this to you. Please accept it. And offering, then Krishna says, I will accept it. I will accept the thing that you offer me with a pure mind and with love. If we do not do some sacrifice, then when we are eating, we are taking things from the earth, consuming them, we are also accumulating sin, even if we are following a vegetarian diet, if we are not doing sacrifice. This is a very important thing. It is said that Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kinchid jagatyam jagat tena taktena bhunjitha magridha kasyasvidhanam. Sri Ishopanishad says, everything in this universe is owned and controlled by Bhagavan, by Ishvara. And one should only take what is set aside for oneself. So something has been set aside for all of us. To take more than we need is not only greedy and inconsiderate, it is actually a sin. It is a pop. Sin will increase our burden of ignorance. So if we do sacrifice, we accept what is needed and we take it as itself a sacrifice, then we are not going to be burdened and drawn down by the weight of our sins. So this is a very important concept, this cycle of doing yajna. Now, there is also another thing that Krishna is explaining in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Yadyadacharati sreshtas tattadevetaro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokastad. So people will tend to follow an example. People want to look up to someone who's a leader. And they say, oh, look, that person is setting a good example. Nowadays, it's very hard to find people who set a good example. There are people who set examples of being liars and cheaters and, bullies and so many different inauspicious qualities. But the leader, a true leader, is a self-realized person. The self-realized person does not have any duty to perform, and they don't have any reason to gain anything, but they will still continue to work because then people will follow this good example. And if there are no good people doing exemplary things, then people become confused. What happens? liars and cheaters and rogues will come up and they'll say, look, do this, do what I do, be a rogue like me and live with no consideration for any consequences, and then you'll be very happy. That is what happens when there are no leaders. There are examples of great kings like Janaka Maharaj. He attained perfection while ruling a kingdom. He was a king. He was ruling. He had to do so much administration work, but he was also a devotee of Bhagavan, a great person and a Mahajan, one of 12 Mahajans, great authorities. Krishna is another example. Krishna is the avatar. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he has come for such purposes as speaking the Bhagavad Gita. But Krishna himself is engaging in his duty to prevent the world from falling into ruin. He is also ruling his kingdom in Dwarka. When we talk about karma, we are talking about doing things. How do things actually get done? There are differences between the vision of someone in ignorance and the vision of someone in knowledge. The person in ignorance is motivated by false ego, and they are attached by, motivated by attachment to the result. I want the result. I want the fruits of my action. And they think, I am doing this, I am doing that, I am doing the other, I do this better than you. And then the reality is that will be bound by the results of action. But that person who is tattvavit, who is the seer, who is wise, they will be motivated out of duty or sacrifice. I must do this. I should do this. This is the right thing to do. And their mindset will be detachment. They will think, this is my duty. I should do this and I must do it properly, but I am not entitled to the results. Now, what happens if we are very deeply attached to the result? When something happens so that we don't get the result of our work, then we become very angry. We'll talk about that later and the dangers of anger. But a wise person will see, I did my best. I really tried to do the right thing, but somehow the results didn't come. So because the results are not up to me. And a wise person also sees it is the modes of nature that are acting upon both myself, my body, my mind, my senses, and the world around me. So this is a very, very important concept to understand. And then in reality, this person, the wise person who is acting with detachment and who is understanding things this way, they are free from entanglement. So to be detached, now the concept of detachment is very important to understand because in modern mental health practice, they say that detachment is a kind of disorder because we should be attached, meaning we should be present. And in that sense, in talking about mental health, they think of detachment as the person who's out of their head. They're not really present in the moment. But detachment doesn't mean to be indifferent, and it also doesn't mean to be detached in that sense of some type of psychopathy. It means that we understand the mechanics of nature. We're not attached to the result. And it doesn't mean that we don't care. We feel compassion, but we also understand that the cause of our suffering is not necessarily what someone has done or what I have done or what you have done, but it is something that is due to us that had to come as a result of previous action. So instead of thinking of ourselves as the cause, we become a conscious observer. The concept of being a conscious observer is extremely important. We have to become conscious and understand how things work. There is also the concept of swadharma. Okay. So there is a saying, it is better to perform one's own prescribed duty imperfectly than to execute another's duty perfectly. This is very important because according to our nature, we have a prescribed duty. Now, Arjuna is also asking Krishna indirectly, please remind me, what is my prescribed duty? And Krishna is explaining, your duty as a Kshatriya is to protect the order of the world from being led by these unrighteous persons such as Duryodhana. We have to understand what is our swadharma, what is the right thing for us to do. If we try to imitate someone else, it creates a type of conflict. And sometimes to stick with what we are supposed to do can be very difficult. Now, karma yoga is kind of like one step on the ladder of yoga. Beyond karma yoga is jnana yoga and bhakti yoga. But we'll talk about those later. But in karma yoga, one should understand one's own duty and try to perform that. Now, there's a very important question that comes up when we are trying to address the idea of righteous action. Arjuna says, he asks a question, what is it that seems to impel someone to do unrighteous acts, to do sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if by force, as if there's some force that's dragging them? And sometimes, of course, people will say, oh, the devil made me do it, as if I am not responsible. And the answer for this is lust. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it is lust and lust alone. It burns like fire. It is born of passion and it transforms into wrath. It is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world. It burns and it is never satisfied. These are very important things to understand. So think about it in this way. So as we increase the motive passion, we're also increasing desire. When our strong desires become unsatisfied, what happens? We get frustrated and we get angry. You took this thing that was supposed to be mine, and I'm going to fight you now. That is kind of the attitude of the person who feels that they are entitled to enjoy. And lust is something that when you feed it, it doesn't become satisfied. It might go down for a little bit, but then it comes back more than before. It is given, the example is given like pouring ghee or gasoline onto a fire. It does not put the fire out. If we put a lot of it, it might make the flames go down for just a second and then whoosh, they go back up again, even more. There are 3 levels of obscuration of how desire or lust can obscure knowledge. There's the example of smoke covering fire. Now, when smoke is covering fire, you can still see the fire, but the fire has been masked somewhat by the smoke. When there is dust on a mirror, the mirror is covered by dust. You can't see a reflection without removing the dust. You can remove the dust, but without removing the dust, you cannot see your reflection in the mirror. And the embryo covered by the womb, completely covered. There's no way out. There's no way to get uncovered. And these are the 3 degrees by which one can be covered by the ignorance resulting from lust. There is a hierarchy. Now, Krishna is giving Arjuna some strategies. There is the soul. The soul is superior to intelligence. And you cannot fight lust just with the mind because the mind is unstable. You have to use the intelligence, which is superior to mind. And it is the soul which is superior to intelligence. But the soul is like the passenger and the observer in the body. The intelligence gives us our analytical tools. It gives us the ability to discriminate, to say, this is something, but it is not the other thing. And the mind is superior to the senses. and the senses are superior to dull matter. So we have to be able to use intelligence. One example, for let's say that I'm sitting and I think about ice cream. And I say, oh, I want to have ice cream. That's the mind. The mind is saying it would taste really good. It would taste good on my tongue. It would taste good in my senses. And then the intelligence says, no, wait a minute. If you eat ice cream, it's not going to be good for you. First of all, it's cold weather, and that's not going to help with your health in cold weather to eat cold things. Secondly, you really don't need to eat creamy, fatty, sweet things right now. That's not going to be good for your health, and just don't do it. Okay. And then if we are in a state of balance, we might listen to the intelligence rather than just go with the impulse of the mind. Whereas, consider on the other hand, there's a dog. Okay, the dog may have a very sweet nature, but you put a plate of sandwiches in front of the dog, and what's going to happen? Well, the dog's going to grab one because dogs are always hungry. That's just their nature. The dog doesn't really have the kind of intelligence to say, no, wait a minute, I should not take that sandwich because then master will be angry with me. No, the dog just thinks, me hungry, eat, and that's it. So we want to, in the human form of life, we want to exercise our intelligence and use intelligence to direct and control the mind and how we engage the mind. So how is it that we can conquer the, how can we conquer these forces that pull us toward ignorance? First of all, we want to regulate the senses. This is the first step. We have to mitigate our eating. We have to eat the right amount, not too much, not too little. Secondly, we need to steady the mind. We should use deliberation and spiritual intelligence to control the lower faculties. And three, we should know the self. We must understand the self, who you are. What is my nature as the soul, as the transcendent reality within the layers of mind, intelligence, and ego? I am not this body. I am not these senses. I am also not the mind. The mind is simply reflecting the desires that are present in the soul. What are the desires present in the soul? The soul seeks bliss, unadulterated happiness. We do not want to be miserable, but we relate to this body and we think that the body's happiness will equate to the soul's happiness. Is that true? No. Otherwise, the most beautiful people, the most rich people would be the most happy. Are they? No. Have we ever heard of rich, beautiful, and powerful people doing things like committing suicide? All the time. It happens so much. Why? Because more of enjoyment does not make you more happy. Self-satisfaction is something that comes from within. So by steadying the mind and by spiritual strength, one can conquer over lust. One can find happiness from within. One can find self-satisfaction. So that concludes this presentation on Bhagavad Gita, third chapter. And the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita really has one very essential lesson, which is that it is by performance of karma as a duty, focusing on duty and detaching ourselves from the attempt to fulfill desire, that we can actually make progress on the path of transcendence. But karma yoga is just one step. There are more steps to come, which we will describe in the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita and in subsequent chapters. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare Gaur Premanande